Let's talk about service improvements. I want to just throw a couple of things on the board to talk about the relationship that certain items might have to medallion systems. One might argue that as you improve the system and make it better, that could enhance the value. We have credit cards in most jurisdictions, and these are the results of the survey we did, by the way, of ITR members. Most jurisdictions have them in some form or another, and almost all jurisdictions with higher medallion values have them, but not all. Miami is one example. Vehicle retirement. Most jurisdictions have some form of retirement. Almost all jurisdictions with high values have vehicle age restrictions, but not all. Edmonton is a good example of that. It's very interesting because the whole point of this is try to, if we can have a correlation or some idea of what different policies are enacted in different cities and how that affects value, I think that's a good way to start discussion. The survey continues. Taxonomics. It's nothing to do with Reaganomics. Taxonomics. Economic variables. This is very, very important, and we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, throughout the day. Rates of fare. Most every city has metered rates of fare, and in most cities, regulatory control over earnings. And to take that a step further, the concept of lease caps or lease limitations. Some cities have it and some don't. Many cities with high medallion values have lease caps, but not all. Miami, I hate to put you on the spot, Joe. Another situation where Miami stands out. That's why you're on our panel today, of course, in addition to being a nice guy. And a smart guy. Earnings revenue data. Almost all cities do not have reliable data. That's no surprise. But with TPEP and all these great things that we heard about with the technology vendors, hopefully there'll be a day when not only every regulator has hard data to offset some of the issues that we usually have with drivers who claim that they never make any money. When you hear stories of them making $100,000. It's a great profession. You come here, you could have no education, you can just get right in the middle of it, and not only make a better life for yourself, which is great. But let's not talk about taxes. Let's not talk about how poor we are. Drivers I think are doing better in a lot of cities, but the data can arm us with that. If they're not doing that well, and we need to give them a living wage, the data will help us get there. What I'm more concerned about also, though, is how that data can help with the overall transit system. Let's go outside the box. We talked about day one outside of the comfort zone. Let's think beyond taxis. Let's think about the broader transportation system. We're looking at how the mode needs to get more respect and integrate into public transportation, complement or exist alongside or supplement or help mass transit. You think about how we could be the solution to a lot of the transit problems. We could use the data to help with traffic patterns becoming better, helping a city move its people in general through mass transit and buses in a better way. And we could be part of the solution. And this is one of the things that Camille and I at UTRC and Buzz are going to be talking about and doing studies on, is seeing how we can use data that we have now, and many of the TLCs that now have the credit card and GPS data. We can use the breadcrumb data that we get to make the city better. Making the city better could conceivably help medallion values and make the taxi system better. If you get the buses to move more quickly, free up some traffic, that helps the cab system. They're all interrelated. So unfortunately, we don't have reliable data that goes to the benefit of the folks that are saying they never get paid enough money. And for those who don't pay their taxes, this ensures that they do, right, Leon? Medallion or permit value. Does not appear to be any correlation between the number of taxi permits and value. A good example is Philadelphia. It has 1,600 permits. It peaked at about $270,000. And in Miami, 2,105 permits, and they peaked at about $200,000. Some have gone down since then. Just a couple of examples of trends in medallion values and overall pre-recession rapid rises. All of these cities have transferable permits. Seattle, 3,890 permits, between 150 to 220. New York City, we mentioned. Philadelphia went up to 270 at one point. Miami-Dade at 200, and Edmonton at 110. That's interesting. It went up from 2,000 to 110,000. It's pretty significant. Let's talk quickly about medallion financing. We're going to be hearing from lenders today. They're going to join our mix and the soup here. Who lends? We have banks. We have Capital One of the sponsors here. It's going to be on the panel. We have niche lenders, specialized lending. You have other specialized lenders like I think Medallion Financial, and then you have these other brokers, which is an interesting concept. Something to be debated whether brokers should be involved in lending, and there are folks that aren't regulated as heavily as the banks are that actually take a part in the lending, and it's interesting, and we will explore that. You just don't walk in if you want to buy a medallion to a Chase Bank branch and just walk in there and say I want to lend. Though some probably do. Most taxi drivers, as you know, word of mouth. They hang out at the airports. Everybody's got a guy, right, or a girl. They all have their broker. It's kind of the person they meet through their friends, and they get back to that broker somehow. And these brokers, some are licensed, like in New York City, we licensed them. They kind of like real estate brokers, and it's like a real estate transaction. There are closings, there are papers flying everywhere, UCC documents. These brokers are really the kind of the point of contact, and the brokers are the ones that bring them to the big banks or get the lending for them, and some of them even participate in the loans, taking a subordinate interest. So they'll put up 5–10%. The bank will put up 90%. And it's amazing. Like when we did our medallion sales in New York City, we raised over $200 million for the city of New York. And basically what happened is at the time, I think some of these folks were offering 0% down. You tell me what bank walks around asking for 0% down on a loan. It's really amazing, and it's a testament to the strength of the medallion. But who's being financed? By the way, we also have a lot of credit unions, which is interesting. Credit unions, usually have owner drivers as members, which is very interesting because they have a stake in it. They get better rates, and they participate through that interesting financial arrangement. Who is being financed? Taxi companies, taxi drivers, and also quote-unquote absentee owners. Those who may own medallions and retire to Miami or South Florida, and they get a check in the mail. Other stakeholders. Government is another stakeholder we'll be talking about. Auctions, restricted medallions, clean air and accessible medallions. The use of the medallion and permitting system to further public policy. Very interesting concept. We did it in New York. Other cities have followed. And they're a player. They're at the table. They decide when the permits are going to be issued, how many. We can't overlook them, of course. Well, we wouldn't. That's all of you. Brokers, attorneys, we mentioned them. Financing terms, concepts, and procedures. I think I mentioned that sometimes there's very, very little down payment that you have to put because this is an investment that if you read the press clippings on this, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or whatnot, there are many, many articles written over the years that the medallion, whether you like it or not, whether the values, in your opinion, are real or not, has outperformed practically every other type of investment that exists. Real estate, bonds, you name it. When you just look at the appreciation of the asset, it's really incredible. And you could argue it's whatever one is willing to pay for it. You could argue that in certain neighborhoods, whether they're in Chicago or New York City, is that co-op really worth that much? Well, if someone's willing to pay for it, and someone's willing to pay for a medallion, that's the capitalistic system. Balloon payments, we're going to hear a little bit about that. I'm sure that Richard will talk a little bit about the financing arrangements and how medallion financing works. Medallion closings, like real estate, like I said. There's TLC involvement in many jurisdictions where they oversee the sale and have to approve it. Foreclosures, forced sales, divestiture. What happens when you've done something bad and you own a medallion and you've invested all this money? Many instances you're forced to sell. And what a sticky scenario that you have when you've kind of built up a whole system and you need to take it away from somebody. Lawsuits could be flying. We'll talk about another concept, which I'll get to in a minute, about how you change a medallion system if that's possible. It's been done once before. I think Sunline did it. Equity, collateral for other loans. This is important. People, when you talk about the American dream and how a medallion could be, the American dream. You know, people have put their kids through college using the equity that they've built up in their medallion as collateral for other loans. You know, as much as you might think that it's not a good thing, you know, I don't think anyone can deny that people making their lives better when they come to this country is a good thing. And I'll leave you one other final comment on that. And now that I don't work, well, full-time for the government anymore, I can say whatever I would like. You know, what I will say is that, and that's why I'm very interested in sharing with you Daus and Palm's and their presentation, because it's kind of interesting, because it's kind of like when you go to a medallion system, if you're starting with a clean slate, it's like you can go there, but you really can't come back. It's, not to get too controversial on you, but it's kind of like a society or an economic system can go from, I think, from communism to capitalism, but you can't go back. Once you have capitalism, you cannot, like, well, one might argue that's happening in some places, but it ain't easy. You know, when you build up economic interests and value in a system where people have a monetary stake, and this was something that happened in New York City many, many years ago. You know, they were talking about, and Victor might remember this, Mayor Dinkins was talking about getting rid of the medallions, you know, and you'd have to legally buy them back. Just like eminent domain, if a city wants to condemn property and take it and use it for a highway, you know, legally, there's no difference. You have to pay just compensation if you're taking this government-created right or property interest away from them. And we'll also, I'm sure, debate whether you believe it's a property interest or a privilege, like license is a privilege. And there's some cases that have defined it, especially in New York, as a property interest. So let's identify the key ingredients. We're going to hear about and talk about this all day. And this is just a starting point. You may have other ideas. I've categorized them in terms of safety, customer service, and economic health. You could argue that by making a system better or more safe, that it enhances the health of the system and the medallion values or the system's overall benefits. Driver safety, low crime against drivers, that's got to help. Partitions and security cameras, do cities have them? How does that contribute to making it safer? Passenger safety, low accident rates. You know, remember, you know, the medallions can be attached if you get hit with a personal injury lawsuit because a cab was in an accident. You know, there's a whole procedure, right, Peter, we have in New York City where you can actually go after the medallion and get a judgment and go after the value of the medallion if it's beyond the insurance requirements. Driver background checks, and these are just a few. Driver medical and medical fitness. Defensive driving.